Hello everyone. So in JavaScript, we all have used things like getElementById, getElementsByClassName, or querySelector. But what if we have to build something similar of our own, right? We have to write our own implementation of them. How would we write them? So in this video, we are going to see how we can do it. So in this HTML file, we just have some random HTML elements. We have a div with the ID test. We have two div with class test, and we have another div with class container, which is containing a button inside it, right? And we'll see how this get element by ID, get element by class names, and query selector work, and we'll try to replicate their functionality. We'll try to create our own implementation of them, right? So let's start with get element by ID. So if I just write console.log document dot get element by ID, right, and just type here test, right? If I save this and go to the browser, you'll see we get this div element, right? Now, how to implement our own functionality for this? How to implement our own get element by ID, right? For that, what we can do, create a function for it. I'll call it, let's say, get element by ID, right? And what it will take an ID, okay? And what will it return? It will return us some sort of the element, right? So let me create a variable for it, result equals to null. This will be the variable which will contain the output node or the result node, and at the end we'll just return this result. Now the main thing remains how to traverse the DOM to find that element with this given ID, right? So for that we'll be using recursion. Okay, so let's create a function for it. I'll call this function, let's say, traverse. Okay, traverse node, traverse DOM. Okay, and we'll pass it the node, initial node, right? And we'll call this function here using traverse DOM, and we'll pass document.body as a node for now. So that what we'll be doing, we'll be traversing through the body, moving bottom from top to bottom, and looking for the element with this particular ID, right? So if we go to the Chrome, and here in the element section, we see here we have body, and right below it as its first children, we have a div with the ID test, which we are looking for, right? We have to return this div as a result. So in this traverse DOM function, what I'll do, I'll simply check if node.id is equal to id. If this is the case, that means we have found our result. So I'll just store that particular node in my result, and I'll return from here. So because we don't have to look for further nodes, we have found our target node. But otherwise, what I need to do, I need to traverse through all of its children, right? So if I am at body element, right, and what I want to do, I want to traverse all of these children, right? And how can we get all of these children? So if I just console.log here, let me remove the for loop, just console.log node.children. This will give all the nodes present inside the body element. If we see in the console, what happened? Oh yeah, we didn't call it. So let me just call it console.log get element by ID and pass it test. If I save this, you see we get 5 elements: div with the ID test, div 2 div with class test, then another div with container, then script tags, right? Similarly, what how it was present inside the body. Okay, so once we get the children, we need to loop through them, right? For that, I'll write a simple for loop for let I equals to 0, I is less than node dot children dot length, and I plus plus, and I'll recursively call the traverse DOM function, and this time I'll pass node dot children at that particular index. So let me just quickly walk through what we have done till now. So we created a function get element by ID, right? We declared a variable result where we'll be storing our result. We create a function traverse DOM, which will be using recursion to traverse through the HTML body, right? We'll start with the body tag, and we compare each of the children to check if the ID matches with the target ID that we have provided, right? So let's see if this works or not. Save this, go to the browser, get sing null. Why is that? Yeah, my bad. It will be a string test. A bit mistake. Okay. So let's save it again. Go to the browser. See, both of them are returning the same result. What if we provided some value which does not exist? Let te1 est, some random value. Will they both return? Yeah, they both return the same value, null. Okay, so this was how we implemented getElementById. Now let's see how we can implement getElementsByClassName, right? So inside the HTML, we can see we have two divs with the class test, right? So if I go here, if I write here console.log document dot get elements by class name and provide the class name test, what will be the result? We see the result contain an array with two elements in it, right? Both of the divs with class test, right? Now how we can implement it? So it will be very similar to our getElementById function. So let me just copy paste it, the whole code for now, right? Uncomment it. We'll rename it to, let's say, getElementsByClassName, right? Okay. And here result, instead of null, instead of returning a single value, we can have multiple values, right? It returns an array of elements, so result will be an array here, right? Okay. And let me just console.log get elements by class name and test, right? Here we are not comparing id, right? We have to compare the class. So first we check if this node contain any class or not. So if node dot class list, right? If class list exists, that means this node has some class attached to it, right? If this is the case, and node dot class list dot contains, and replace this id with class name, right? If any node contain this class name in its class list, what we'll do, instead of storing it, we'll push it to the array. Dot push, everything else remains the same, right? So let me quickly go through what we have done till now. We have created a function with the name getElementsByClassName. We have created a variable to store the result. It is an array because elements getElementsByClassName returns multiple elements, an array of elements, right? We done the similar thing. We created a function which will recursively traverse through the document body and will keep checking if the class list of that particular node contains this class which we have provided, which is test. If that is the case, push that particular node to the result variable, right? And then we are doing the same thing for the children. Let's save this and see what we get as a result. Yep, we get the same thing. We get an array of two div elements with class test, right? And what will happen if we give a random value? We both return empty array. Cool. We handle these two cases. Now let's look how we to implement query selector. So we'll write our own implementation of querySelectorAll. If you understand this, you'll easily be able to write your own query selector as well. It's almost very similar. The only difference is, instead of a single element, querySelectorAll returns us an array of elements, right? So what does it takes? It takes selectors, right? It is not limited to a particular ID or a class. It can take a tag name, right? Or it can even take it like this, like div.node, right? Return the div, or like this, right? P tag inside a div with the class highlighted, right? So it can take the selector in many kind of formats, right? So let's see how we can build it. So let me just comment this much, right? So first let's check what will happen if I write if I want to access this container div, right? How will I access it? Query selector all, using query selector all. Okay, so console.log document dot query selector all, right? And in here I will write it like this, div dot container. So div with the class container. Let's run this. So it returns us an array with an element at 0th index present with a div containing a class container. What if we want to access a button inside it, right? So inside it I want to access a button. What will it return then? You see, it will return the button element inside an array. Okay, so let's see how we can write an own implementation for this. Okay, I'll call it We'll call it like my query selector all, query selector all, right? It will take your selector, right? Same like before, we'll have an array of results, and at the end we'll be returning this result. We'll have a function to traverse through the body, the HTML body, right? We'll call it function traverse DOM. Okay, it will take the node, right? And we'll be calling this function here, traverse DOM, and we'll pass here document.body. Same what we were doing up to now. Now inside the traverse DOM, right? We'll do the same thing. First, we need to write the case. What will happen if we have found that node? Now, how to check if we have found that node, right? We can't just compare it ID equals to a class list equals to, not like that. It can be the query, the selector in this is not limited to a particular thing. So in JavaScript, we have a function, right? It's called matches, right? It says the matches method of the element interface test whether the element would be selected by the specified CSS selector. So what will it return? It will return either true or false, right? So using this, we can check if that selector has that particular, if that node has that particular selector or not. As you can see in this example, we have multiple list, right? We have a list with multiple LIs, and one of the LI list item contain a class endangered. So here what they have done is check if bird dot match is endangered. So if that particular node, right, if that HTML node uh, returns true when using the matches function and passing the class as dot endangered, then we are console logging it. And as a result, they have told that this will be console.log to check if we have that particular selector or if the node matches that particular selector or not, right? So for that, I'll create a helper function is match, and I'll pass the node and the selector to it. If it returns true, that means this element justifies our case, fulfills our condition. That means we need to push it to our result array, right? Result dot push node, and we have to do the same thing with its children as well, right? So for that I equals to 0, I is less than node dot children dot length I plus plus, right? And we will call the traverse DOM function passing the node dot children at I index. Okay, now let's create this isMatch helper function. Function isMatch takes the node and the selector, right? And what it will return, matches selector, right? We are using the matches function. So if this node is can be selected using this selector, it will return true, else it will return false, right? If it returns true, we are pushing this to our result array, right? And let's try to run this now, right? And I'll call it here console.log my query selector, and we'll pass the same thing, div with this container and this button. Let's see if we get the same result. The console, yes, we get the same result. Okay, so let me just quickly walk through how we implemented it one more time. Up to here, we have everything similar. Created a result array, return the result, right? We created a traverse DOM function which will call recursively again and again. The main logic was this thing. We create a helper function as match, and all it is doing, it uses the matches function, right? And right. So if this node can be selected using this selector, it will return as true, else it will return as false, right? Using this matches function, we will able to identify all the nodes, right? All the nodes which can be selected using this selector. And if it returns as true, we are pushing the node to the result array, and at the end we are returning the result array. You see how we access query selector all in document.id? We write document dot, right? How to make our functions accessible like document dot my query selector all. How to do that? It's pretty easy. All we have to do is add it to the prototype of document. So we have to do is write document dot prototype dot, we'll write here my query selector all equals to my query selector all. We save this, run it again. Yep, getting the same result. And if I remove the button, just the div dot container, run it again. Yep, getting the same result. Yep. So that was it for this video. The code link will be available in the description of this video. Thank you for watching.